Welcome to our Stargate week. Today we're closing out some old business by returning to Atlantis, a payoff to a dangling plot thread from our last trilogy of episodes. On their way back from a planet where they may have been attacked by a flying monkey, things get kind of wonky all of a sudden. The steering's gone out, and that's not good when you're trying to thread the needle with a space gate. Then, everything goes out. No, now we gotta exchange insurance information, and the Ancients are real sticklers for paperwork, too. After the titles, more bad news. In addition to that, unless you're either Thor or Marty McFly, lightning is bad news. Now, the actual bad news is that by hitting the gate, they slowed down, which means they're going to fall out of orbit. As Rodney explains how screwed they are now, and how the planet of Oz down below couldn't have affected them, there's no hints of any technology there whatsoever. One of the jumper engines starts to work. Rodney has good news and bad news.
Slim to no chance of getting the DHD working. That system is completely out of whack. It's going to take some incredibly intricate rerouting of the power.
What's the good news?
That was the good news.
By what metric was any of that good? The life support has gone down, but then inexplicably everything starts working again, and they're able to dial Atlantis and make it back. It's been an extremely long time since we last covered Season 5, and I think that one might be down right now since 2 server hosts ago, actually. So just to refresh your memory, Robert Picardo's Richard Woolsey, the guy who was created to fill out the bumpers of a clip show, remember, has managed to parlay that into being the new head of the Atlantis expedition. Go him. He's concerned about this kerfuffle, especially because there's nothing wrong with the jumper. In fact, there's so nothing wrong, Zelenka is giving Rodney shit over thinking that there ever was. Just Rodney Fatfingers screwing things up or something. But now there are problems on Atlantis, starting with Woolsey getting transported out to one of the piers by mistake, and the doors won't let him back in to transport back, and he can't get a hold of anybody. Still a lovely day for a stroll, and no flying monkeys either. Well, I'm afraid there is more bad news. Yeah, again, besides that, whatever was wrong with the jumper has spread to the city, despite the fact that the jumper systems were isolated from the city before even passing through the gates. So even if there was a virus, it should have been impossible to get there. We're not talking about a firewall. When it's not connected to the network, it's like trying to walk a tightrope that's already been snipped. Woolsey finally makes it back to hear all the piling bad news, including the fact that the Stargate is now down. And that's kind of important. It is why we put it in the title. When the power goes out across the city, only one thing now works. McKay's laptop.
Probably just the battery.
No, it's drawing power from the system.
So everything's out except your computer?
Oh man, Rodney, not trying to scare you, but ever see Monsters Are Due on Maple Street? Soon gibberish begins appearing on the screen until finally one word can be understood. Help. The entity identifies herself as Dr. Weir, which is hard to take on board since she's dead. She says she's in the computer and something about subspace, then everything comes back online. What Rodney and Zelenka decide to do is to fuse the bits of random programming that's screwing with the city and then merge it all together.
Isn't merging all these programs potentially dangerous?
Well, hell yeah. It's no more dangerous than allowing this thing to continue wreaking havoc on the city's systems.
Or getting zapped by bolts of lightning.
Oh, it's a bad day when creating a terrible new crisis is an improvement on your immediate problems. This is Rodney hitting the Release All Monsters button in Cabin in the Woods. After that, he sets up a 2-way vocal system so that they can talk with this entity, who still claims to be Dr. Weir. She says after being left on the replicator homeworld, she was fully converted into nanites, but despite their best efforts, her own identity remained inside. She hooked up with the heretic replicators who were trying to ascend like their creators. The human replica version of her was told she'd been killed, which was probably for her own good. Bad enough to think you're a copy without someone alive out there to rub it in your face. She picks up when we last saw Dr. Weir in that ship flying among the wreckage of the replicator planet, talking about finally being able to work without looking over their shoulders. The work, it seems, was on finding a way to ascend. She explained to them everything she knew about what needed to happen. It wasn't working, which isn't really a surprise, although not exactly for the reason that McKay scoffed at machines trying to ascend. Rather, it seems to me that, assuming that this isn't something supernatural, organic brains running human software is going to be very different from an electronic brain running computer software. That what allows a human to ascend wouldn't be the same path any more than a plant trying to strengthen a sick animal by putting it in the sun. Coruscant seems to think similarly, although not quite. His thought was that all they needed to do was use the means that allows identities to transmit between bodies, and then just exist without one. Will just exist as a field of energy. And since ascending means being pure energy, that should be close enough, right?
You told us that ascension is achieved when the physical body is transformed into pure energy.
It really looks like he's talking to the woman sitting on the bench, implying that that's Dr. Weir. If so, that requires you to build a suspension bridge of disbelief. The problem they had was that originally Tori Higginson was going to come back to resolve the previous season's cliffhanger. There had been one more episode that she was supposed to appear in season 4, but she didn't. Well, she declined to appear in this season 5 episode, and so naturally they had to figure out a way around that. The episode is able to cover for everything, actually, including the fact that Dr. Weir looks different in this scene with Coruscant because the replicators built her a new body. The only single flaw in that is that at the end of Be All My Sins Remembered, Dr. Weir looked the way she always had. But really, that's minor enough that we can write it off. They could have explained it, but even I'll admit sometimes papering over a plot hole would just get in the way.